have a really fun guest with me, Marc Abrams, who is a soul integration coach. And the topic that we'll be discussing today is called quantum leaping and timeline shifting. And this has been a topic of discussion amongst many of my friends, family, and clients as well. So as in Synchronicity, I was guided to reach out to Marc because I know that he has been navigating some of these timeline shifts as well. And I thought that between the two of us, we could offer some really good, valuable tips, tools, and techniques that have worked well for us to share with our listeners and our viewers. So welcome, Marc.
Happy to be here. So happy. Thank you for having me. I love having these discussions. It's so much fun. And as what usually happens, information starts coming before we get on. Before, whenever I'm on with somebody, we're collaborating, stuff starts coming. And it's always a different way of seeing or perceiving or thinking about the topic we're going to discuss, which is so cool.
Absolutely.
So,
and I love how we scheduled it. we both said, let's go with the flow and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So It's kind of neat how it all transpired.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your journey of understanding. Well, let's talk about what a timeline is. I think people question that. What is the word timeline? And then we'll go into your story, and then I can share a little bit about my story, because people will say, what does that mean? What does timeline shifting mean? So what is your impression of what a timeline shift is?
Well, we're awareness, we're consciousness, we're focused in. Our five senses keep us focused on what we're perceiving, what's going on around us. So our consciousness is open to multiple dimensions. We are multidimensional. We are energetic beings, okay, living in a body. So we are focused into this body. We manifest this body here in this physical universe. But when we go, think of it as like the bottom of a funnel, okay? So when you go up the funnel, that is all you. You are the funnel. But as you go up, the consciousness expands and you get to perceive more of who you are, which are higher dimensional frequencies. So when that starts to happen, we have the ability to bring that awareness in here from the higher up on the funnel and perceive it with our brain. And we start to really perceive different timelines. We experience timeline shifts and things like that. Now, there's a lot going on within our body that causes that to happen. And I could get into explaining what I just got right before we got on. Information starts coming through. A different way of explaining this always happens. And this is a really cool one. So when we're grounding our energy, our multidimensional energy is grounding, being focused, being compressed into this 3D dimension, okay? So we are manifesting this physical body. It's dense matter, right? Everything around us is dense matter. It's all consciousness, but we perceive it as dense matter. As our soul's energy grounds, it comes down and it grounds into the planet, and it comes up through our central channel, our chakras, and comes out around us. And what we perceive around us is that energetic flow, okay? So it's almost like a movie screen, right? But what we perceive in the movie screen is a function of the energy that's going on in here. So as our soul's energy comes down and passes through our body, it reflects out everything that's going on within here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is the cause. Everything we experience is the effect. So when we start to heal, when we start to look at our traumas that we have not processed, these are lower vibrational energy. It's lower vibrational energy trapped within the body. As our soul's energy comes up through us, it encounters this dense energy and it reflects it out. Okay, so that's where we get 3D, because we're reflecting out dense energy, which was placed there by some trauma that we've experienced in this life or even other lives that we never processed. We kind of didn't feel it. We didn't want to feel it. We turned away from it. And that's being reflected out to be felt now, okay? Because the energy in the universe is supportive of this ascension process, okay? This planet is going through the ascension process and it's supportive. So we are here to have an opportunity to finally process all of these traumas that have been stuck within our physical bodies. If it goes back to prior lifetimes, we come in here with those traumas with that same energetic frequency and it's still here. But now is the time, this ascension time, to heal that, to raise the frequency of this dense energy from these traumas within our body. Okay, so that's kind of why we get triggered, because our soul's energy is moving through us and it's saying this dense packet within your body is in the way. So it reflects it out in a situation. Okay, so it gives us the opportunity to finally feel it instead of run from it, right? So when we're having all that happen, we like to think that we're in a 3D timeline when we're in fear, you know, anxiety and things like that, because we're very much based in a timeline. Okay, the mind is perceiving event after event after event. So when we're feeling fearful, that's because we have some unresolved trauma or dense energy block in our body that happened in the past. When we're anxious, there's something in the future that our mind is anticipating that's going to happen, right? So we feel that, and that keeps us locked into this 3D timeline with these events. Now, when we start to separate ourselves from those or detach from those events, from those emotions, something interesting happens. We increase our soul's energy flow through our body, okay? And we start to hold space for our higher frequency, our multidimensional energy to come through our body. And when we could do that and bring awareness to the process and allow ourselves to pause and feel the dense emotions that come up, the anxiety, the fear, whatever's going on around us, it doesn't feel good. When we could allow that to happen and hold it, just pause and say, oh, I'm going to finally feel this. I'm not going to run from it. I'm not going to try to solve the problem. I'm going to feel it. The frequency of that dense energy rises. And that in turn, again, allows more of our multidimensional energy, our soul, our higher self, to ground into our body. And as we continue to move through that process, we start to expand. And now we start to manifest a reality that is more in alignment with a higher frequency, like moving into a new Earth or 5D Earth.
Absolutely.
So that's how it works. But my guides this morning came through, or just a little while ago, I'm sorry, excuse me. And they're showing me like little rivers of energy flowing up and down our body.
Meridians.
Okay. Yeah, meridians. And they're all different frequencies. They're all at different frequencies. And we can consider these different timelines. So sometimes we have a little bit of a bump in our frequency and we jump into another one. And it's slightly different. We could call it quantum jumping, whatever you want to call it, right? But yet it's slightly different. This just happened to me the other day. It's doing things, knew I had done it, but yet it wasn't complete. You know what I mean?
You weren't totally grounded into it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I just shifted a little bit here into a different reality. That's been happening more and more frequently. And it's cool when you can be aware of it. You know,
totally.
Like, oh, okay, you know what's going on, right? So that's really what's happening. So when we free up these traumas, this dense energy, we make that dense energy available when we heal it. When we sit and we be present with it, we allow it to rise in frequency and it becomes part of the mix. It's no longer separated out. And that allows us to rise in frequency as a whole and start to experience the higher frequency timelines.
Definitely. And I know you work in analogies a lot, and so do I. This must be our Arcturian guides kicking in, because my whole life I've worked in analogies. And I think that's why I resonate with you so much, because you really break it down in an analogy. And the analogy I was getting when you were talking about the traumas, I literally, my guides were telling me it's like panning for gold. When you get all the murky, muddy water in there and you start shaking it and sifting it, you can't really see the gold nugget in there. But the more you shake and sift and release those denser emotions and those traumas, you'll get to the point where you start to see that little nugget of gold. And then as you continue to release those traumas, you'll have a beautiful, shiny nugget of gold there, which is that higher vibrational timeline, or your higher, your higher self.
And that's what we're doing. Yeah, because we're shaking up our DNA, right? We're increasing the frequency that our DNA vibrates at. And when we do that, it's very much like panning for gold. We know that the gold is locked up in there and we start panning for it, right? And we're releasing the density. As we shake it faster and faster, the density is releasing and it's there. It just appears.
Right? And it could be a little turbulent in those times, during the
Yes.
shaking, I always have that impression of, you know, when there's an airplane going up through the clouds, you can't see the sun because it's so cloudy, but it could be a little turbulent as you're going up. But once you get up above those clouds and you see that sunshine, then you're like, okay, I have shifted into that new timeline. You had talked about some, you know, when you do shift in frequency and timeline, you can recognize it. What can you come up with some examples of things that you've noticed when you have shifted into another frequency or timeline, how your external or maybe even your internal body is telling you you've shifted?
Well, there's deja vu type experiences, but the other day, I don't remember the exact specifics, but I was at my office and I had done some things, and like 10 minutes later, I looked and they had not been done. Okay. And I'm like, all right, I know I just did that, right? I know I just did that. So things like that. You could have synchronicities. You could have synchronicities on the clock. I've had situations where a song is playing on the radio and it stops mid-song, and another song comes on that triggers, that aligns with me. Okay, it triggers like an alignment with me, a frequency. So it's a synchronicity. Things like that are really cool when they happen in the physical, right? You know, we get deja vu and things like that. But when something physical happens, that's absolutely amazing and wild. Like the song, just the radio just stops playing and a song that has a tremendous meaning to me comes on.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So that's happened. Yeah.
And I know there's days when, you know, I'll get up in the morning and I'm in a super high frequency. I can sense it. And then I go about my day and run some errands and go out and about. And I feel invisible. People are not seeing me. I'm not there. It's like they're in another timeline and I'm totally in a different frequency. And I'm noticing that more and more as I'm out and about.
Yeah, but you know, your light, the frequency you're vibrating at is, it's almost like people would be staring into the sun, you know, and they can't see, right? If you're staring at the sun and there's clouds or planes flying by or whatever, you're not going to see it because the sun's blinding you, right? So the light is it's just a big difference in frequency.
Yeah,
so
you can definitely sense that and I'll notice too, I know Greg Braden talks about this a lot. What's going on in your internal will reflect out into that weather. Like he talks about how the weather, like if your internal environment is a little cloudy, your day will be cloudy, you know, externally and feeling sunny. And I do notice that when I'm in those higher frequency timelines, it's just, you've talked about this, very vibrant and beautiful, and you can really sense
everything looks
colors.
different. Yes.
Yeah. So
it's
I think
amazing.
it's tuning into your body too. I know for me, being my empathic abilities being super clairsentient, I will, if I'm out of alignment, my back will go out of alignment, or my shoulder will go out. It's literally my body will be like, hey, this is what's happening. So it was frustrating. I'm like, do we really have to go to that extent? Like to have a physical reaction? But now
sometimes I'll walk into a store, okay, and my back, I can't walk hardly. It's like it tightens right up, and I'm like, I used to say, well, what the heck's going on? Now I know. I'm like, okay, there's something, you know, the energy in here, there's something that I'm picking up. It's just not feeling right. And I'll leave the store and all of a sudden it's gone.
Yes.
Right? So stuff like that. Yeah. But like you said, with perceiving higher frequencies, when you feel like you're not being seen, it's kind of like our guides, right? Like, you know, your Arcturian guide, your Pleiadian, whatever it may be, they're there.
Oh, I love that.
But people can't perceive them, right? Because they're vibrating at a higher frequency.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about some tips and tools to help people out there who are, you know, say people are out there working in the 3D environment. Like for you were an accountant and I was working in healthcare, and we started to awaken. We started to understand that we needed to release these traumas. We started working on ourselves. And we went through the sifting of the panning of gold. And then we decided to take that leap, that quantum leap into a higher frequency timeline. You want to share very briefly your story so people have an understanding that they're not alone out there and that this is possible.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've always been very intuitive. Okay. Very empathic, very intuitive. I've had connection But 4 years ago, I had an experience that was just blew my mind. I was out on my deck. It was summertime, laying out there, just enjoying the day, listening to music, listening to my playlist. You know, it's rock music. It's nothing, you know, it's just normal music. And something happened. My crown popped open, my crown chakra. And all of a sudden I was in space. Okay. I was with the stars. Energy was rushing through me, just through my whole being. It was just absolutely incredible. I started getting all this information about life on other planets, life within our solar system, Earth, gravity, all sorts of stuff just started coming through me all at once. Now, I should mention, about a month before that, we were on a vacation down in the Cayman Islands, and I had got off the plane and a song starts playing in my head. It was A New Day Has Come by Celine Dion.
Oh yeah.
You're familiar with that? Out of the blue, starts playing. The whole time we were in Cayman, it was a week, this song's playing in my head. I had no idea what it meant. Well, a month, 3-4 weeks later, I understood what it meant. A new day was coming, and it was when I had popped. So, but between that time I was in Cayman and the time I had that experience, I was watching a show on TV. I watch Ancient Aliens. I used to watch, I still watch those occasionally, whatever.
Yeah.
Into the Akashic Records and all that kind of stuff. So there was a show on about the Akashic Records. And I've always been very interested. I've always admired Nikola Tesla, okay, and his connection to the Akashic Records and the information he was able to experience and bring forward for humanity from that connection. So I'm like, I'm going to try to do that. And the next day, I guess I did a Google search, and the next day an email appears in my inbox, right, about a meditation for Akashic Records.
That's funny.
So I purchase it, and it's a guided meditation. There's like 10 or 12 half-hour guided meditations, and they take you into this room, and you meet various characters, animals, and things like that. Well, it turns out one of those animals was my guide.
Oh, that's
okay.
Cool.
And I had no idea at the time. I go through this whole series of guided meditations, and then he starts communicating with me outside of the guided meditation. Okay. So, and it's literally like a phone conversation, Tanya. I mean, it's the way I communicate, it's very telepathic.
Yes, I do too.
Like daytime, middle of the day, I could be at my accounting office and I'm having conversations with my Pleiadian guide. So I don't have to go into a trance state or anything like that.
It's just there. It's in you. Yeah, that clear audience. Yeah.
I mean, I've had deceased relatives just coming in and all sorts of things, I mean, it's so this all started around that time, and I'm communicating with him. Galactic Federation came, introduced me to my Pleiadian guide, and all this stuff just opened up in a rapid fashion. And I realized that I had experiences when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, with very, very fearful experiences, nightmares. And I realized that was my guide trying to, that energy to come through me. And of course the fear projects out. So we made that connection, which I've subsequently healed, right? So just amazing things. And ever since then, I've just had this amazing connection, and just this intuitive knowing to bring this information forward, and this passion to bring this forward, to help people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it can be scary at first, because I, like you, when I first started connecting with my guides or my higher self, it was scary at first, because they were like, for example, I'm sleeping at night, I just started learning about crystals. So I started to sleep with some crystals, and I wake up at like 3 in the morning to my sound bar blasting angelic music. And I'm like, it woke me straight up out of bed, and I got mad at them. I said, "Don't you dare do that to me again!" It terrified me. Yeah. And they didn't contact me again that way. But then I had to sit back and say, "Okay, I apologize. You guys really scared me. I was not expecting you to blast angelic music at like 2 or 3 in the morning, But that was kind of they were messing around with me. They were trying to be funny, but it ended up my traumas ended up causing it, to be feared.
Oh yeah.
And now if they did that to me, I'd get up and I'd laugh. I'd be like, "Oh, hi guys," but it's you're so correct. And say, depending on where your frequency is or where your vibration is, what you are projecting and reflecting back into your own, reality, what your life could or could not look like. And they're trying, I think they do their best to try to, because it's us, it's just us at a higher, higher frequency.
That's right.
Right?
It's clear. It's helping us to remove those energetic blockages, those dense blockages. Like with me, when the Federation came in, I had one instance where I was in my kitchen and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to actually really perceive you, the three of you, and bang, it was like a transformer blew. So loud, I jumped like 5 feet. I'm like, all right, maybe I'm not quite ready yet. So like that's a physical manifestation. Another time I woke up at 3 a.m. and I was paralyzed, sleep paralysis, couldn't move. And I had 3 shadow beings with red eyes standing next to my bed.
Oh my God.
And as soon as I saw them there, one of them reached out like this, literally reached its hand out to me. And I was so panicked. The next day I reached out to my guide and I'm like, what the heck was that? He goes, they were you. He literally said, they were your henchmen. They were you. They're you. They're bringing up the fear so that you can feel it and process it and let it go.
Move through it.
So that I can move through it. And I moved through that and it just helped the connection.
Like, does it have to be at 3 a.m?
Oh, I was terrified because the thing was, Tanya, I looked at them and one of them reached out. The middle one reached out to me. I was like, okay, and here I'm laying in bed. My wife's next to me. And, I'm like, okay, under the covers, right? But I literally, my guide said, he's like, Marc, they're you. They're you. This energy is trying to move through you. And that's how the fear was reflected out for you to experience it and feel it.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Created.
I went through that too, working in the hospital. I worked around a lot of death and loss, and I would see people's spirits leaving their body, and some were dark, some were light, some were terrifying, and I just kept my mouth shut. Because at the time, it was like 10 years ago. At the time, I was like, no one's going to believe me that I'm seeing these things. But it's like funny how we put ourselves through these little training grounds, these little training exercises, because I think that was probably yours to move through the fear, and mine was to move through it in a hospital setting where I was seeing energies, and they were I'd be late at night in the office and the chair would move across the room and I'm like, whoa, but and that was terrifying for me. And at that point I shut it down. I'm like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to witness this. But
that's what I did.
More comfortable.
When I was like young, when I was 8 years old, when I was having these nightmares, I was shutting it down.
Yes. And
I was identifying with that.
I think a lot of people have done that, because when I talk to people, they say, as a child, I had these experiences, like the boogeyman or the monster under the bed or whatever it was. It was their fear. It was their fear. And it's just getting them to a point of feeling safe again to open that back up so they can move through those traumas.
I think a lot of that has to do with me is to kind of shut you down so that you can move through life and experience what you need to experience before you're ready to really reconnect and open.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like it grounds you into this reality.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So that we could have our life experiences, go through some of the things that we came here to go through, and experience that as a separate sovereign being. And then at some point we reconnect, we open back up and remember who we truly are. Absolutely. So that's what those were. Yeah,
because I think I've always been pretty grounded. I mean, I'm a fire sign, so I'm usually pretty grounded, but there are times when I do notice myself, I'm like, oh, I gotta ground myself back in and pull myself back in. So I totally resonate with that there are times when they disconnect from us because they're like, you need to experience, you really need to ground yourself into this reality, because if we're constantly off in the clouds, or in those higher frequencies, then it makes it difficult for us to stay here. I just did a podcast last week about astral travel and lucid dreaming, and I'm very good at it. Like I literally at night, the moment my head hits that pillow, I am
you're off.
I am gone. I love it. It's like, I love to sleep. And I joke that I'm here on earth to sleep all the time, but I'm not, you know,
Right.
I think I love it because I'm in a higher frequency and it
Yeah.
feels really good. And I've had such meaningful connections with my guides and my, you know, cosmic family that it feels so good. And then once I wake up, I'm like, oh, I'm back here in the three.
Isn't that the thing, right? I had Robert Monroe. You know who Robert Monroe is?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Hemisync. So yeah, I've read his books, all 3 or 4 of them, into that, and it's really amazing stuff. But yeah, we're here to have experiences. We're here obviously to play our role as a light worker and star seeds with Ascension and the Ascension process, that kind of thing. But we're also here on a soul level to have experiences, unique experiences and individual experiences. So for us to run around being, oh, you know, I'm multidimensional, none of this is really real, you can't really get that, you know, authenticity, let's put it that way, in the life that you're trying to live here, right? So
Absolutely.
we go through and you know, so I was shut down. I had that fear, and the dreams, it was about ETs, you know, and this happens a lot because you hear about a lot of people that are talking about visitations from ETs at night and things like that, right?
Yes.
And so that was the fear that I had, and turned out that was my, you know, was my guide. And later on, you know, when I was coming out of this, when the Galactic Federation came to me and they were helping me to clear a lot of these fears, I had these 3 shadow beings at night come back, you know, and I got to experience them and breathe through that with awareness now, and knowing that it was a reflection of density that was within me, you know, not an external thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought that up because it's so powerful. I think when I was seeing beings at the hospital or energies, consciousness, I immediately said, do not show up at the end of my bed. I mean, I remember I wrote down on a piece of paper, I do not want to see an apparition at the end of my bed. I do not want to be woken up at 3 a.m, terrified, you know, and then I think I burned the paper. I did something with it. So I made a pretty serious contract that I didn't want that to happen, but they show up to me in so many other ways that are not terrifying to me, because I think that was my biggest concern. But I can see where you're coming from, though. You had to move through that fear, and that was their way of assisting you in doing that. And I think that's like a really awesome perspective.
And it's a natural process, really, because they're high frequency beings. They're aspects of us on a higher frequency level, on a multidimensional level. But when that energy comes in and we start to bring awareness to that energy, it's that very bringing in of that energy that reflects out the density. Because in order for that energy to come through us, it needs to clear the way of all the density that's in place, right? So if my star family is starting to come through, and they represent in my mind and my ego, you know, ETs, my ET guides, they're going to reflect out the polarity of that into my reality, because that's what's in the way. That's the fear that's in the way from blocking that energy from coming through.
Yeah.
So it's the polarity of it, right?
It's really neat how everybody's subconscious too brings in that higher self, that guide, and you know, that guide in all different varieties. Like mine is Sasquatch. For some reason, he's just all over the place. He you know, and it's not like a physical Sasquatch.
That's the identity. The identity.
And I joke with it, like, and I think our higher self wants us to be in that you know, childlike nature, that higher vibrational frequency of joy and bliss and happiness. And for me, when I think of, you know, I watch these shows about Sasquatch where he's this terrifying monster and beast, I don't resonate with that, because I resonate with a more fun loving, happy, you know, joyful, humorous kind of guide. And so it's funny how all of
that's how mine is too.
Yeah. And you've said that in your videos where they
hilarious.
Just and they're hilarious.
Yeah.
And that comes through in their personality, which I think that comes through in our personality.
That's their aspects of us. Yeah,
they connect with us on that level.
Yeah, so we can align with them. I want to bring something up that's very important, because a lot of people think like, I've got to do this or I've got to do that, or how do I, you know, I get triggered or I have fear of something. If we could flip that around and think that this fear is what we're being shown by our higher self that needs to be felt. And when we could bring that thought up in the moment, we could create a little bit of space and take a breath and just be like, I'm going to sit with this. because I'm being shown something by my soul that I need to feel, right? So we don't be controlled by the external situation. We could separate, detach from it, and breathe with it and feel it and allow more of our soul's energy to come through us. So these fears are, our soul's way of showing us what is blocking that energy from coming through, our multidimensionalness,
I
from
love that.
grounding.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's transition into that. Let's talk about legit some of the fears that you and I have and everyone else seems to be having from taking that leap from, moving from that 3D, position into a higher frequency. And I know for me, it was just the stability of having a job that had, a constant paycheck, the insurance, the, just the comfort zone that I had with that, and not really even at the time, not even thinking that those were limited beliefs at the time, So for you, what are some of the fears that you recognized coming up when you started to move through that process?
Well, I've got two partners in my firm, my accounting firm, that are older than I am, and they want to retire. Okay, so it was time for me. But the way everything kind of came together, it was obvious that I was being moved in a different direction. Now, I still had a ton of fear and insecurity. Making good money. What am I going to do? Insurance, which my wife is going to cover the insurance. She's a nurse, so she's in healthcare. So we got, that stuff's okay, whatever, little details sorted out. So it's like, all right, that's not a problem. But it's what am I going to move into? And the hardest part about it is when you can't see it.
Yes.
Trusting in it.
The
when you can't
in the clouds.
see it. And I've used that analogy too in my videos. You're in the clouds, right?
Yeah.
But the sun is there, but you just can't see it at the moment, right? But it's there.
You might feel it because it's warm, right? You may feel it there. You just don't.
But it's there, right? It's just you can't see it. So it's the same thing. It was an opportunity for me to work on trusting my path, trusting all the events that led up to this point, all the amazing multidimensional experiences, everything that was happening. You look back and you're like, okay, this is all supposed to be happening, right? But you trust in that, and part of it is releasing or detaching from the not knowing, because the ego has to figure it out and has to know. And if it can't, there's anxiety there, right? I've always had this thing where I need to be able to see the future. And if I can't figure it out, I don't act.
Yes.
I pause, I freeze. So it was working through that, feeling the fear of, because I had thoughts, should I buy my partners out? Should I stay as an accountant? That kind of thing. Continue doing that. That would have been the easy path. That would have been the path everybody probably would have expected me to do. But that wasn't what I'm here to, that's not what I'm here to do.
That's,
and I know that
on a soul level, you probably got you would have gotten shooken up a little bit had you chosen that path. I would have to.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's coming together with the energy and what's happening around you. When you can look at what's happening around you, and as the old is crumbling, okay, the old is crumbling away, that creates space for the new to come through. And we have to allow that to happen. My guides told me this too. He goes, you're in a pit, okay, and you're in a hole, and there's dirt all around you, and the dirt's crumbling in. And actually, I mentioned this in a video. Okay, this is about a donkey. Okay,
I think
this was a true story. So this donkey's in this hole, falls in this hole, and he can't get out. And he's crying and crying and crying. And the townspeople come in and they can't lift him out. They just can't lift him out. He can't climb out. So they grab shovels and they start throwing dirt down in the hole. Now the donkey's in the hole thinking that he's terrified. Dirt's coming in. Are they trying to bury me? What's happening? How am I going to get out? And then he realizes the dirt is raising the ground. So he's stepping up onto the dirt. Okay. And eventually he gets out of the hole.
Yeah.
So we trust in that instead of trying to stop the dirt from coming in as our life is crumbling around us. It's just the old falling away. And when we can allow that to happen, and detach from what we think our life should look like, what our ego thinks our life should look like, detach from that, we allow new to birth. It's a birthing process, right?
Absolutely.
And that starts to come through. So right now I'm in a state where, I still have a couple months left. It's busy time for me, right? I mean, we've got a buyer, we're transitioning and all that. I've got to work through the end of April, but I see that finish line now, and I'm just so grateful. And I'm not worried about what's happening or coming next, because I'm excited to experience it as it happens. I'm not trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. And I think too, when you've worked in that position for so long in that frequency, you've created a lot of momentum, because many of us could go 20, 30, 40 years or more before we wake up and say, oh, I want to shift. It's like a car going 60 miles per hour. You can't just go and then, you've got to slow down and then turn around and then create momentum in the other direction. So, right. And I think a lot of that has to do with it is you've got so much momentum going, you've got to start just slowing down. And that's what I did. I was doing my full-time job similar to you, but then I started creating a higher dimensional business, and things were opening up more and more. And then I just kind of naturally let go of the denser frequency position that I had, and just naturally moved into a higher vibrational frequency. And that's what I encourage people to do if they can, if they can do that. Yes. You may have to juggle a little bit, And
it's challenging too, because we're so programmed ever since, we're little about, you have, a job and all this. And I'm not, of course, we're in a 3D reality here, and we need to survive. We need to, of course, to have income and things like that. So, but it's how it's going to happen is where a lot of us get off track, because what happens is when we can't see how it's going to happen right away, we attach back to the programming. Absolutely. And we kind of derail ourselves before we even allow the universe to do its thing.
Yeah. And I have a funny example. When I had, for a couple of weeks, I had been getting a nudge to reach out to you, and I'm like, okay. And then the day I reached out, I sent you the email, and then I went about my business. Well, I've been kind of in this minimalistic phase where I'm going through my stuff and I'm selling things, and
yes, I'm like that too. Yeah.
And I know you've done a video on that before about the boundaries and whatnot, but I had a bunch of stuff listed out there for probably well over a month, and I was getting the nudge to reach out to you. The day I reached out to you, I sent the email, and then you responded, and within minutes, bing, 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 bing. Is this available? 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 I was like overwhelmed. I was like, wow, did I just shift timelines, or what just happened? But it was really funny, because it was like my higher guidance was telling me, you need to connect, you need to speak on this topic. And then the moment I did, all this energy, it was like I let go of some dense energy, and all of this energy came flowing through.
And it rushes through. Yes. Because you took an action that was in alignment. Maybe you had a little bit of discomfort or a little bit of fear with that, and you took that step, right? And then you kind of let go. You let go. You're like, all right, I took the step. I'm gonna let's see what happens, right? And then all of a sudden, things start moving. So that's what happens. It's very important to, a lot of times I know people want to feel like they're doing all the time. And I will often say it's okay to not do.
Yeah, to be.
But I don't want to take it to the extreme where people are like, okay, I'm just going to sit and do nothing. Yeah. What we need to be, if there's anything we need to be doing, we need to be working on our energetic frequency, our state of alignment, and getting into alignment. That's the only thing we need to do. Because when we do that, inspiration comes forward, and the motivation to take an action comes forward from a place of alignment instead of from the ego, right?
Yes. And I have received that download myself, is that when you're physically appears you're doing nothing, you're actually doing a lot energetically. So I know Abraham Hicks has talked about that. She says, setting focus or pointing focus and setting intentions is not doing nothing. You're actually doing a lot in an energetic standpoint, but you do at some point need to follow that nudge to take the inspired action in a physical standpoint.
Yes. Yeah, because we're here to create, we're here to do. That's why we're in this physical dimension. But we've we've seen it all the time. You know, people that are like workaholics, they work 80 hours a week. They're making all this money, but yet they're not fulfilled.
Yes.
There's something missing inside, right? You can accumulate all the wealth that they want, but it's never enough.
Absolutely.
Right? Because there's some, and that's where we get into, you know, we're working from programming and not working from alignment. So we're not getting that fulfillment in our life's purpose. We're not aligned with our life's purpose, right? We're aligned with society,
Yes.
you know, create, build wealth, that kind of thing. So when we flip it around and the doing doesn't become the cause or the reason, the alignment becomes the cause.
Yes.
The reality becomes the effect of that, and you are going to experience a reality that is in alignment with that frequency that you've attained. So it's like important to do that first.
Yeah, it's like I visualize like almost like a we used to call them water balloon launchers. I don't know. It's like, you know, when you pull back a rubber band and it's like for so long, if you're creating that resistance, you pull it back and then you finally align. It's like, boo, you know, everything comes flying at you and you're like, whoa, I've been creating so much resistance with the rubber band that now once it's released,
it frees.
It's like, this is everything that is in your vortex, you know, here you go.
It's like a gush of just energy. And that's the thing, because when we could get that energy flowing with velocity at a fast rate, right? A high frequency rate,
momentum.
That high frequency energy is what comes up in our toric field and fills out and creates our reality. So now our reality is a reflection of that high frequency energy, which is what we truly want. You know, so, you know, you can only, it's like a shell game. This universe is like a shell game. We can focus on the shells and move them here, but you're going to end up with the same effect if you're trying to change your reality by, you know, the external, maneuvering the external pieces, right? People move, people, you know, change relationships is a good one. Happens a lot. I'm not right for that person. I'm just going to go out and they end up with the same person in a different body, right?
Because they haven't worked through their traumas.
You know, whatever, changing jobs, same thing. Oh, that job's not resonating. I'm going to go get another job, and the same frequency appears in a different setting, right? That's the shell game. But when we could heal the things that the reality is showing us, because it's a reflection of what's going on in here, what our soul is wanting us to feel, when we can look at it and say, okay, all right, my higher self is showing me that because I need to feel this. I need to sit with this. I got to breathe with this, bring love and compassion to the table, alchemize it, right? When we bring love forward, it will melt that density. Okay, we'll just bring it right back into the mix. So we do that, and now we can make a decision about the situation with clarity, from a place of guidance, from a place of intuitiveness, from a place of alignment, instead of being reactive. I don't like you, I'm going to go over there. Oh, well, there's the same person in a different body. It's the same energy, right? So
people say that all the time.
Like
why do I always date the same guys? And you know, it's like, well, let's take a look at those patterns, you know, and and you're 100% right, spot on, you know, with that. And it can apply to any area of your life.
Anything, yes. Yeah, it's when we let the external control us. It's, you know, when you're being reflected something from an individual in a situation, they're showing you something that is within you. Now, if something happens and you don't feel good, something comes up to be felt, that's a reflection. They are a reflection of that dense energy that you have held in your body, that you have refused to feel. So they're showing you what to feel. So be grateful, right? Totally. Isn't that an opportunity to heal?
Absolutely. And let's talk about that how we wait for the external to do things before we take a step forward in our own. And I'm seeing this a lot in the spiritual community, where, you know, people are waiting for new earth to happen. We're waiting for, you know, people to someone else to do something before we act. And I see this a lot in the empath community. They're like I joke, they're little hermits and little introverts. And because I'm an empath too. And it's like, oh, I've got to protect my energy in my own little space, but I'm kind of a little scared to step out and start connecting. And I know my guidance has been kind of really nudging me strongly. You need to start connecting with other light workers, other stars.
Me too. More of
Mhm.
that. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that. If people out there who are listening or watching are stuck in a waiting pattern, what are some things that they can do to move through that so they can create some shifts in their energy? Because as they shift, everyone, we're all connected, so we're all going to shift. And if we all do this, it'll come a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the individual, to what's going on within their body, with their energetic makeup. When they're sitting, breath work and things like that, obviously, to start getting your energy moving. And that's going to bring stuff up. When we start to raise our frequency, it brings up everything that's in the way from that's preventing that process from happening. So we work through that. We do the shadow work, we do the healing work, and things like that. But if you're finding you're just completely stuck and you're doing that work, you feel like nothing's happening, that's a good time to get into a space of alignment and then do something that maybe you would not have done if you were not in alignment. You were out of alignment. So something that you would have bumped up against your comfort zone. Okay. You're like, no, I'm not. Reaching out is a great example.
Yeah.
Reaching out to somebody. So you get into a space of alignment, and then you're going to find that, oh, I was afraid to do that, but now I'm not feeling so afraid because I'm aligned. Then you take that action.
I love that, because I think a lot people are afraid to connect right now. We've had this kind of energy over the planet of being very isolated and in solitude. And now it's like, okay, let's all start connecting and taking that initial step to reach out to, start a little group in your area, or, do something where you can gather more like-minded individuals together. And it only takes one person to start, to kind of set that in motion. And I think right now the energy is prime for that. We are all,
absolutely.
I know as a light worker, I have been like, I'm chewing at the bit to connect with others, to talk about these topics, and to really, I've been in, very kind of more deep meditative states recently. I think especially since the beginning of February, it's like the last couple of weeks. Really deep, into meditation. And getting a lot of guidance. And my guidance has been connect.
Yeah, it is. The energy is right for that. That's what I've been getting as well. But these last few years, when you could take a step back and look at it, what it did was it brought people inside. They really had to they felt uncomfortable. They felt fear, right? All of this came up. So it's like, where do we go to escape that? Well, when you realize externally there's really no escape, you go inside and you start working with it, you start sitting with it, and you start creating that space and being able to look at it objectively and not aligned with the fear, right? So it's almost like the entire, world was put into a dark night of the soul.
100%,
all at once. Boom, right? You're in it, and we've gone through this, so we know what it's like.
We probably went through it well before all of this, and our lights were like beacons, during that for everyone else.
We're able to see it, right? We're able to see. We're like, oh, okay, the whole world's in the dark night of the soul. Wow, look at all that, right? So we know it because we've gone through it. So now we're here to assist people, because it's not over yet. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening. That's what happens when timelines crumble. Okay, there's a lot of craziness that's coming still. Now, everything's already happened, but the manifestation of it is still happening, if that makes sense. On a frequency level, this energy's coming through, this high frequency light's coming through, but in this 3D reality, there's a timeline, and it lags behind the manifestation, right? So we get to watch it all crumble. Okay,
which I kind of like my seats. I'm kind of glad I'm sitting where I am during this process, and I know my higher self chose this.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're here for. But we're here to be that beacon for those that see their world crumbling, their way of life crumbling, and everything changing, and not knowing what the heck's going on, right? That's where we're gonna come forward. There's so many of us that are kind of waiting in the wings. And through this process, we've been going through what we need to heal to prepare us.
Yes.
So, I mean, I've worked through a lot. You've worked through a lot. You and I both have had big changes in life. And we're ready to embrace and explain what's happening, and show people the reflection of what is trying to move through them, their soul. So we could reflect that energy back to them, their own soul. We could reflect back to them by embodying that. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And I look back at when I was going through my dark night of the soul, it would have been really nice to have a shining light there, for me when I was going through that. I felt like I was blind in the dark, and I'm like, I didn't know I was grasping on the Dolores Cannon and certain, Edward Case.
Oh, I listened to,
I went down my own little rabbit hole, and it would have been nice to have a physical person to be able to talk to about it. I just felt very alone when I was going through it, but I know that was part of my journey, and I learned a lot through that experience. And now it's like I can kind of say, listen, you don't have to be alone through this. I went through that alone, but you don't have to.
We've experienced it, but I had my guide come constantly telling me, you like to suffer. I'm like, oh, go away.
You like to suffer.
I got all that spiritual stuff, but this is different. This situation's different. Like, I don't want to hear that right now, So it's go through those situations, and then something happens because you start to embody what you've learned, or actually what we're remembering from our soul, right? Our DNA activates. We remember more and more of who we truly are. We bring that in. It's all electromagnetic.
Yes.
It's coming in. And we're starting to see these situations as not so bad anymore, right? They're just, okay, well, got to sit with that. It's all good. I trust, because I have seen
like
enough.
A video game. That's how I look at it. It's like a video game. You have
process.
Super Mario Brother. You got an obstacle there. You're like, okay, I can overcome the obstacle. But once I get past that, I get to have the little mushroom with a coin, and so it's funny how you go through those patterns and whatnot, but you begin to consciously be more aware of them, and you can break through them. So
there's a lot of people. I mean, the expectations for people talk about ascension or awakening, and the connection you and I have. We have this with each other. We have it with our guides. People see that and they're like, oh, I want to have that. Yes. Right? Everybody has that ability. That is who they are. We are who they are. Okay, we all have that ability, but to get to open that up and remember these abilities and these communications and things like that, you've got to feel the stuff that hasn't been felt, and that doesn't feel good.
True.
And a lot of people turn away at that point. They're like, boy, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And they're just not ready. They're just not ready until something bigger happens.
And it's going to come around a lot stronger.
It's going to come around stronger. Yeah, like we see with the planet, right?
Deal with it when it's little. If that's any advice I can give to anybody.
Yeah, but it's tough because people are like, I don't like this. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. But it just,
but that's when
once you move it through, it feels amazing, so it's just getting to the other side,
Getting to the other side, and it's the trust. It's trusting. You'll have enough things happen that you're like, yeah, it's all divinely planned. Okay, you can't deny it. It's like, well, if it's all divinely planned, this thing that's happening to me right now is part of the plan. So heck, I'm going to just
sit back and enjoy the ride.
Exactly, right? It's an experience. And if you trust, it'll all work out. It'll all be good, because that's the path.
It is.
Right? It's like being that in that boat, that current, and not stop reaching for the tree roots on the side of the river. Just let it go. Be in the current.
Let it go. Go with the flow.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, this was a great topic. I feel like we should probably wrap it up. It's been quite a while that we've been on here. We've talked about way more than timeline shifting and quantum leaping, which I think is fantastic. So that was our intention, was to go with the flow and see where it guides us. But Marc, before we wrap it up, tell us a little bit about the services that you offer and how people can reach you if they want to connect more with you.
The main hub is soulintegrationcoach.com. That's my website. So there's a link to my YouTube channel. I'm on YouTube as Marc Abrams.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram as Soul Integration Coach. I'm on Facebook. I just hit 10,000 followers on my Facebook page.
Fantastic.
So you can find me on Facebook. I've got great content, videos, things like that. I've got reels generally once a week. Actually, no, 3 times a week on Instagram. Videos a couple times a week on YouTube. I offer coaching, one-on-one coaching services, which, for people that are going through dark night of the soul and having struggles with things like that, great opportunity to get support there. And I have a membership as well. where I have 2 live group sessions monthly where people could get on Zoom, just like we are. And we could talk about what's going on with the energy, anything, all sorts of stuff, ET guides, spirit guides, dark night of the soul, whatever it may be.
That's nice. That's really nice. And that sounds like a good community, you know, that you're bringing together for people to be able to connect. And I'm feeling more of that. I'm definitely feeling we all need to start doing, you know, a lot more of that. Just, I know for me personally, when I connect with other light workers, I get activations and I activate them. It's kind of wild how it happens. Yeah. So I'll go about my day after I've connected, and then boom, boom, boom. These some of my abilities or gifts may get stronger, or I may have different interactions, and that's fun to me.
We're tapping into that bandwidth, and even, you know, you and I will leave this session and we'll still be connected on that level, right? So it's just amazing quantumly how we're all connected, and that information just moves back and forth.
It is.
You know,
well,
so that's how we hooked up.
totally, and that's amazing. And it's like, you know, is there anything else that you think you would want to share with the listeners before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I just want to make this point, because this has been coming up a lot and it's so helpful. It's been helpful to me through my journey. Just know that everything that is happening to you is because your soul's energy is coming forward. It's coming forward. So don't judge anything as good or bad. Just know that your soul is showing you this experience that might not feel so good in the moment is there because it needs to be felt. You need to pause and feel it, because your soul is trying to move more energy and ground more energy here into this 3D reality.
Yes.
Okay, so it's all a gift. All these situations are a gift, and it's your signpost. It's your breadcrumbs. If you think of the journey that way, you just follow the breadcrumbs. Oh, I need to feel that. I need to feel that. I need to feel that. And if you could do that, you're going to just go like this.
And then eventually you're going to get to a point where you're like, everything feels fantastic because I've worked so hard to clear all of these denser emotions and energies that, you know, where maybe at one point, 40% of the time you were in a feel good state, where once you move through all that stuff, you could get up to 80, 90% of the time you're in a feel good state, right?
Exactly. You'll notice you're going to stabilize. Your energy will stabilize. You won't be going like this on the roller coaster. You're going to be more even, and you're just going to be like, you're hitting the waves as they come and you're just riding through them. You know, they're not taking you like this. You're just, okay, go on to the next, because like, that's the journey.
You have a choice to ride on top of the wave or to ride in the riptide, right? So it's like, you know, so in Florida, they would teach us that you don't fight against the riptide. If you get caught in one, that you go with, so it's like you have to learn to not fight against it. You've got to go with it. It's resistance, and resistance makes it, you know, so much more difficult, so much more painful, physically, emotionally, and mentally, and spiritually, you know. So giving up that resistance can really help you move through those waves, and it's easier.
It's a challenge. And you and I know that it's a challenge in the moment when you get triggered. To be able to take that step and create that space, because right away it's electromagnetic. We align with it.
Yes.
We align with it. And if we could do that, it gets our energy moving, and it allows more of that high frequency light to ground into this body, into our physical body.
Which feels amazing.
And that's what I help people through. The ones that are having a hard time with getting triggered, that's when they come to me, and I guide them through that.
Yes. And that's big right now. A lot of trigger energy happening right now. So I call myself Trigger Tanya, because sometimes when I'm just around people, I'm triggering it and I'm not even I'm standing there, you know, and it's like, okay, I can see what's happening. You know, I'm just bringing up that dense energy for them, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Their subconscious is like, that's who I really am. Well, all this stuff's in the way, and it goes, it's like a cat, right? That gets spooked. You're just like this. You don't even have to say a word. It's just all, again, it's electromagnetic, right?
It's like I walk in the grocery store and everybody's in an uproar. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? It used to bother me, but now I'm like, oh, it's cool.
My back starts to hurt, and I'm like, okay, yeah, let's get done in here and go home. You know, it's like I gotta go. But But you're right. That's exactly what it is, because we're showing them who they really are. So in
Yeah.
order to get to that point, everything that's in the way, that density's got to be healed.
Gotta
It's got to
go.
be cleared.
You gotta feel it to heal it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the fun.
That's the fun. Well, thank you, Marc. I think this
You're
was
so
a
welcome.
great discussion that we had today. And I'm going to be posting this on my YouTube channel, The Existential Empath, as well as the Existential Empath podcast. And Marc will probably be posting it on his YouTube channel and his Potentials podcast as well. So thank you so
Definitely.
much. I appreciate your time, and I'm so grateful that you spent this hour or so, you know.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. It was so much fun.